Hello and welcome to the next lecture. We're gonna test our application properly. So a few videos ago we actually made some changes to our app, so currently our test won't work. We'll fix it. But first let's check the POM XML. Let's recap everything about testing. So we have two dependencies, one of which Quarkus GUnit 5, the GUnit 5 library, and something additional to Quarkus. And the second one is rest assured for testing your endpoints. We also have a Surefire plugin, which helps Maven to set up everything for us. So you can run your application via the mvenv Quarkus. Just a test. mvenv test, right? It will start everything. It will bootstrap the Quarkus on different port, which is 8081 by default because of a test. And you can see that we have hello test, your country is testland, but actual is test123, your country is testland. As I said, our application starts on a different port, right? So one way to change it, if you need something, if you, for example, 8081 is occupied by some other application, right? You can do it with Quarkus HTTP the test port, and we can sell toll, for example, 8083, right? We can put 8083, and let's actually run once again our app. And you will see that we have actually different port this time, and you can see listening on 8083. Okay, so let's remove our base 64 name. Actually, we don't need it. I'll make it like this. So let's remove it for now. We don't need a base 64 name anymore. Let's remove it as well from here, and let's put our greeting config get name. All right, so now, at least I think so, our test should work, right? Let's run it from IntelliJ IDEA for usability. Let's check. So now it should actually say hello test, or at least I think so. Yeah, so now it's actually working correctly, right? Yeah, so now we have a rest assured tests. So if we go to hello, we can check if the string is correct. So if you remember, the test land is actually not going from greeting service. You can see your countries and everything like this here, right? It actually goes from our mock service, which called mock greeting service. So when we call the say hello, it will return us say hello and something, your ID is, and name, right? And your ID is 123. So this actually works for our second method, right, which we're using. But in our case, we're interested in say hello, and in our case, the test configs that we are using is this. So we can specify specific values in a config with a %test. So in our case, we have a hello test and the country is testland, right? That's perfect. But we also can do it the other way. We can go to greeting service, which is mocked in our test package, right? So we can overwrite say hello, for example, right? And return test mock, for example, right? So now it should return actually test mock in our case, right? Let's go to a greeting resource test and run this. And so now it won't match at all, but we should expect a hello test in our case, actually test mock, right? So now, as I said previously, we can actually create the mocks for any service that you have. In our case, we have a more greeting service that we just extended from greeting service. I'm going to edit an annotation called add mock. and the application scope that it will be absorbed. And mock, in our case, actually is just another annotation that contains other annotations. So basically, every annotation that present here will be adjusted and placed here. So in our case, it sets a priority 1, it sets a dependent alternative, and that's the default values for. So how would it actually work in reality, right? So we have a priority for a component, for any component, and default, I think it actually sets to 150. I may be wrong, but so our greeting config, greeting service. Our greeting service by default is 150 by priority, and what actually mock is doing in this case, it sets the priority to 1. So it actually, because the priority is higher, so the lower value, the higher the priority, and because of that, basically our mock service replaces our real greeting service, our real service. And so extends is actually just so that we can overwrite our methods, right? If it's somehow an interface, we can just implement the interface if the greeting service could implement the interface as well. So yeah, that's one way to test. So basically what we're doing is we're going to specific endpoint and we just replace some services. So Quarkus, our backend, is basically working as it was working before. We just replaced some services with a test, and then we just go with the normal flow. We just call the endpoints, get some data back, and see the result. And yeah, so that's first one. Let's remove it. We don't need it anymore. So there is one more thing that you can test, and this thing is actually static data. So let's create a new test called I don't know, static content test. I don't know. Oops, sorry, my keyboard is bad. Let's put a Quarkus test as well here, and let's create our test. In our case, public void test root path, for example, right? So let's do it like this. And so one thing that we put here is you can create a test HTTP resource, which will point to index HTML. And you can actually, for start, you can put a string and see what's this string represents, right? So let's run our test root path. So you can see that it will put, firstly it will put correct endpoint, the correct domain, and after that you have your path. So basically everything that's here will represent something. For example, you can also go to the hello. Oops, make sure without the like this, I think, yes. And if we'll go to there, you can see that it will show us our 8081/hello, right? Perfect. So that's exactly what we in some case need. But that's useless, right? You can say, for me, Dmitry, it's like, well, why do we need it? And string is just to show you that how the URL forms. What you can do actually is to put here a URL. Let's take a JavaNet URL, and here you can actually query this URL by using, for example, IOUtils. Oops, IOUtils from let's use a commons from Apache to string, right, URL. And after that, you can just put the char set default. And so now we'll get a string. For example, we can put it as body. And yeah, let's add the exception as well here. So our test will throw an exception in some case, right? So now let's see what's going on with the body actually. And I think you can understand what index.html will route us for. So we have a resource called metainf.resources.index.html. And so let's see what we actually got. We got the same thing that we had in index.html. So basically, we just queried our data, and we can I don't know. Let's check if the result output will contain this. Why do you see this, right? Let's go to static content, and then assert. What is this? Assert. Let's use what we can use actually. Assertions. Assert equals assert true actually. Let's go with the true. And so let's check if body contains this line, right? So you can be sure that it will work. So let's see. And our test passed greatly, right? So that's one thing. But what if you want to have a different index.html for testing, right? That's also doable. You just need to, as with the service, you just need to create a new folder called resources and put the same thing, metainf. Here you can put the resources folder. Oops. Resources. Let's move this one. And here you just can, let's copy the same index.html. I could copy the whole folder as well, but yeah. And let's remove the head when I need it anymore. And actually let's remove a body and let's set a specific, I don't know, let's put a div. This is a test div. And let's check if we have this div in our result, right? So now, because we have a resources folder, metainf sources, yeah, that's correct. If we have right now in the test folder, we have also a resources folder, and it contains an index.html. So theoretically, it should replace our main resource, main index.html. And let's see how it will behave. So let's start our app. And you can see that it's working correctly, right? So the output is correct, and I can also show you the body. There's out. And you can see that we have our correct body. Yeah. So it's, yeah, this is a test div. So what if you don't want to test an HTTP at all, right? You just want to test your service. So for example, you have a greeting service, right? And you want to check how it will behave, right? We don't want to do the HTTP calls to test some logic that's not like required to have the endpoint at all, right? Maybe you have a service that will be connected with email or with some socket or whatever, right? So that's actually easy. It's easier to implement than I just spent the time. It's faster a lot. So let's use let's create a greeting service test. Service test in a service folder. There will be as well a Quarkus test, right? And so yeah, let's create a, actually, can I do, yeah, I can do it like this. So let's create a, I don't know, check hello return, check returns hello. I want, oops, returns hello, right? So one way to, just a side note, you can do a nice way of marking the tests, where you put firstly the name of the method name, after this, with underscore, we put a condition. For example, I don't know, set value to true somewhere, and then expected result. I won't do it right now, but you can use it later. That's really convenient. So yeah, so let's go with the test. So we want to check our greeting service. So, and it's working really easy. You can just put an inject and put a greeting service here, and that's it. So one more thing here is that we have a priority, right? So now greeting service will be called, which will be mock greeting service. We won't have a greeting service, so you can check if we say hello. We can see that we actually output not we actually, in this case, we'll have a correct result. So hello test, your country is testnet, right? But if we call a greeting service, say hello and then like name, like this, and you can see that it will give us actually a result of the, what is it, hello name, your ID is 123, which is actually a result of a mock greeting service. So that's one thing that will be minus, and we'll see how to fix it a little bit later. But let's concentrate our thought here on a say hello method, which is actually original from our service. So in this case, actually, let's just check assertions search through greeting service say hello equals and let's actually copy what was the output from here. Let's just run this and copy it over because you know it's true right now. So we will shut in current situation to the file, but we can always say so yeah, one thing is actually assert equals is better, and let's put I don't know, result for now empty, right? And let's run the service once again. So now we will copy it over because we know it's correct in our case. So this is correct answer. It should be correct answer. So in our case, what we see is actually yeah, let's run it once again so we will have a true value. So in this case, there was 0 HTTP requests from the test, right? And that's actually how you could test the other, where is it, greeting resource test in our case, because well, actually that's also a good. So this is a good example how you can test a resource, test hello endpoint, right? So you test the logic when you go to /hello with a get, then the status code should be 200 and the body should be like this. In the case of service, you're testing the output of the say hello function, right? So yeah, so that's exactly how it should be. And in our case, if it was actually a name and it was like with a base 6, oh, it won't work. But and if there was some bug, for example, you accidentally made it like this, right? You know, something happens sometimes, and when you run the test, you will see that it shows you an error, and you see the error exactly hello greeting config get name. So there should be something wrong, so you can fix it, of course. And the tests like this will be a lot faster because you don't need to parse the HTTP back and forth. It's not like super, the difference is not so large, but yeah, but you can, in this way, you can test objects or services in our case that are not connected with the endpoint at all. And it's really, really helpful. So now you know how to create a proper tests, how to test your application properly. You know how to test services, how to mock them, how to inject them into the tests, how to test your HTTP endpoints with a rest assured, and you know how to test some URLs For example, index.html, how to test static data. And so you can just have a URL with a test HTTP resource and just query it. That's it. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next lecture.